In front of my whole department, my manager threw my proposal across the table and shouted, "This is trash. What do you even do here?" I sat there as she turned to everyone, laughing. Maybe she should just stick to making copies. I quietly printed out proof that it was actually her own work. She had copied from my original draft. By Friday, an emergency meeting was called, and she never came back to clear out her desk. I still remember the sound of the paper hitting the table. It was a sharp slap, loud enough to echo in the conference room. That's how my Tuesday morning started. Kendra Monroe, my manager for the last year and a half, had just tossed my printed proposal across the glass meeting table like it was a dirty napkin. Her eyes were already locked on mine. "This is trash," she said. Everyone stopped breathing. "What do you even do here?" she followed, her voice louder now, like she was performing for a crowd. I felt every set of eyes on me. People from our data team, marketing analysts, even a couple VPs sitting near the end of the table. I didn't know where to look. My face went hot, my palms cold. Then Kendra looked around at the group, smiling like she was making a joke. "Maybe she should just stick to making copies," she said, laughing. Some people chuckled. A few looked down. One guy, Nick from DevOps, actually winced. I didn't say anything. I didn't move. Just sat there, watching her flip to a slide deck she said she'd whipped together last night. But I recognized it instantly. I'd seen every single visual, every bullet point. Hell, even the colors. It was mine. My whole proposal, rearranged and rebranded, being shown like it was her own genius work. The kicker? She hadn't just stolen it. She'd humiliated me using it. After the meeting ended, I sat frozen in my chair while people filed out. No one looked at me. Kendra didn't even glance back. I spent the rest of the day in a weird fog. Part shame, part fury. I kept playing it over in my head, how she raised her voice, the way she grinned when she said that last line. I went back to my desk and quietly opened the original proposal I'd emailed her the day before. I pulled her slide deck from the company's shared drive. I opened both side by side and started going through them. It was the same. Same concept, same data points, even the same graph titles, just shuffled around a bit. She didn't even bother to rewrite the intro slide. She copied my wording word for word. It wasn't inspiration. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was theft. And she made me the punchline while doing it. That night I skipped dinner. I stayed up printing everything. My email to her. Her version. The timestamps. The metadata in the files. I made 3 copies of everything and stored them in different places. I was calm, but not the good kind of calm. The kind where your heart is cold, and your brain starts planning without you realizing it. The next day I showed up early. I didn't confront her. I didn't make a scene. I smiled when I passed her office. She didn't smile back. Over the next 2 days I quietly met with HR. I showed them the proof. The dates, the drafts, the version history. I showed them the recording from the meeting. We record them for documentation. Ironically, I didn't yell. I just told them what happened. At first they acted surprised, then concerned, then quiet. I left the room without a clear answer, but I knew they saw what I saw. By Friday, I walked into the office and something felt different. An emergency department meeting was called for 11 a.m. Everyone showed up except Kendra. Someone said they saw her being pulled into a closed-door meeting earlier that morning. No one knew where she went after that. By noon, her desk was empty. She never came back to get her things. People whispered for days. Kendra's office door stayed closed, then vanished completely. They removed her nameplate by Monday. The official line was a personnel change, but everyone knew something went down. People started coming to my desk more often, some curious, some trying to guess what happened. Nick from DevOps stopped by and muttered, "Whatever you did, good." Then he walked off. I didn't reply. I didn't smile. But it wasn't over. A week later, I got an invite for a follow-up meeting with HR. When I walked in, there was someone new sitting at the table. A man in a gray blazer, around 50, clean-shaven, firm stare. He introduced himself as Richard Carr, VP of Internal Affairs. He thanked me for my time, then handed me a document with a lot of blacked-out lines. It was a confidentiality release. "I can't talk about everything," he said. "But I wanted to be clear that your concerns were investigated thoroughly." What you reported was part of a broader issue. My hands went cold again. What kind of issue? She's not the first person who's had work copied, he said, lowering his voice. But you're the first who had proof. Concrete proof. And you did the right thing. That should have felt good. But all I could think about was how long this had been happening. How many others got humiliated like I did. How many never said anything. As I stood to leave, he added, one more thing. Don't let anyone make you feel small for standing up. Even quietly. I nodded, but it didn't sit right. Because it wasn't over. 3 days later, I got a message from someone I didn't recognize. A woman named Heather. Her email said she used to work under Kendra in a different department. We met after hours at a coffee shop not far from the office. She looked tired. Like someone who had been holding something in for too long. She did it to me too, Heather said. Took my report, used it as her own. But I didn't have proof. They let me go a month later for performance issues. My stomach turned. Heather looked at me and said, you need to be careful. People like her, they don't just vanish. Someone protected her for a long time. That's when it hit me Kendra wasn't acting alone. I started to look at everything differently after that meeting with Heather. For the first time, I wasn't just angry, I was suspicious. Kendra had gotten away with this for years. HR claimed I was the first with concrete proof. But how did she get away with stealing work from multiple people without anyone higher up noticing? Or caring? Something didn't add up. I dug deeper. Kendra used to work in strategy 2 floors up from our department. Her old boss? Tom Willoughby. He was now our senior director. I hadn't paid much attention to him before. He was one of those execs who smiled a lot and said very little. But once I started paying attention, I noticed things. He never asked about Kendra's departure in meetings. Never mentioned her name. Never referred to her work. It was like she never existed. Which made me wonder, was he cleaning up quietly? One night I stayed late, scrolling through old files on the shared drive. I found something strange. An archived deck from a strategy presentation 2 years ago. Kendra's name was on the cover, but the content? It matched a white paper that had been published by a junior analyst named Marco 6 months earlier. Same ideas, same flow. Different font. I reached out to Marco. He was no longer with the company. When I finally tracked him down, he said, I left because of Kendra. She made my life hell. Then one day I saw her present something I wrote word for word, and Tom told me to let it go. Like it wasn't worth making noise about. Now things were becoming clear. Tom protected her. Which meant if she went down, he had something to lose too. A week later, I got a meeting request from Tom himself. Subject line, let's chat. My stomach twisted. I walked into his office at 4 p.m. sharp. He smiled, stood, offered me coffee. I declined. He didn't sit. Just leaned against the desk, hands in his pockets, pretending to be casual. I just wanted to say thanks, he started. You handled that situation with real professionalism. We're lucky to have you. I waited. He wasn't here to thank me. He was here to feel me out. You know, he went on. Things can get messy when people leave suddenly. I'm glad you kept things quiet. There it was. The warning, wrapped in a compliment. I nodded, kept my face blank. Then he said, we've got some new projects coming up. I'd like to see you lead one. A little reward for how well you handled yourself. Reward? Hush money. A promotion with strings attached. I smiled politely. I'll think about it. But I already knew. I wasn't going to let this end quietly. Not now. I went home that night and stared at my laptop. The anger that had simmered in me since that meeting that day Kendra humiliated me was now burning hotter than ever. It was bigger than her. Tom helped cover for her. He rewarded her. And now he was trying to buy my silence with a fake smile and a promotion. I knew what I had to do. Over the next 2 weeks I kept my head down and acted like everything was fine. I accepted Tom's opportunity. I took on the new project. I smiled at the right people, nodded in the right meetings. But after hours, I wasn't working on data models. I was building a case. I collected every report Kendra had ever submitted that was stored on our servers. I compared them to archived work from her former reports Marco, Heather, a guy named Sean from 6 years back. I cross-referenced timestamps, File metadata, internal emails. Some were direct copies. Others were reworded. But the structure, the data, the conclusions, they weren't hers. I even found notes in Kendra's files with instructions to change labels, keep numbers. That was the smoking gun. I wrote it all up in a report. 56 pages. Neatly organized. Backed with documents, emails, and timelines. I sent it anonymously to 2 places. The company's ethics hotline. The corporate office's board of directors. Then I waited. 3 weeks passed. Nothing happened. Then on a Thursday, right after lunch, the company announced a surprise audit led by an outside legal firm. By Monday, Tom was gone. No goodbye. No warning. His office was boxed up by someone else. That same day, the head of HR held a closed-door meeting with our whole department. She didn't name names but said, "Recent findings have revealed long-term ethics violations involving intellectual property theft. We are taking strong corrective action." People looked around the room. Everyone knew. By Friday, the company sent out a new email. Mandatory training on workplace ethics. A joke, honestly, but it wasn't for me. Because the people who thought they could get away with stealing others' work had finally been dragged into the light. A month later, Heather called me. "They offered me a job again," she said, shocked. "Back pay. Full apology. Marco got a settlement." I heard from another guy, Sean, who said a lawyer called him to verify old work. The company was scrambling to fix its image. And me? I turned down the promotion. I quit 2 months later. Not out of fear. Out of choice. I realized something. Even though I got revenge, I didn't want to work for a place that let it go on so long. That let people like Kendra and Tom thrive for years. Now I work freelance. I pick who I work with. I sleep better. I don't sit in meetings afraid to speak. I never raised my voice once during all of this. But they heard me loud and clear.